Are you preparing for your cloud architect or administrator or cloud support engineer interviews? Or being asked to design or implement high available, that is active active or active passive solution on cloud? If yes, then this video is a must watch. One of the key things interviewers look for is your ability to design high availability and scalable solutions. Something that comes up in nearly every cloud interview. Without a solid understanding of these core concepts, you could struggle to answer questions on how to manage uptime, optimize costs, or handle complex cloud infrastructures. And in this video, we'll show you exactly how to design a highly available architecture on Microsoft Azure Cloud, covering microservices, networking, disaster recovery, backup, monitoring, and cost optimization. This is the same approach many of our learners like Gopinath, David followed to move into high-paying Azure Cloud roles by mastering these exact real-world architecture skills. And if you want to fast-track your journey, make sure you also join our free Azure Job class, where we share the step-by-step roadmap to land Azure Cloud roles faster. And this video is taken from Cloud Certification and Job Focus program, so let's check it out. Also, you can find the link for the masterclass in the description below.
We will be discussing about a problem statement. First of all, I will take you through with the problem statement, so you will understand that what could be the potential problem statement most of the customers are coming up with it. That is one thing. Second, uh, along with that, you will get to know that uh, if that is the problem statement, then what could be the solution, right? Because at the end, you need to figure it out that solution approach, and you need to like design and implement certain kind of activities or certain kind of solutions for your customers, and it will help you out, or maybe you can say it will provide you a kind of better understanding that okay, I mean, if this is the scenario we need to go for it, then how that scenario going to work out, what sort of like probably the approach maybe we can take care, and then according to that you will be able to design and implement that solution for your customers end to end, right? So that's basically the objective what we are planning to take care of it. So we'll understand problem statement, the technical side of the problem statement. We will understand the business goal, what customer has, and to achieve or fulfill that business goal, what kind of solution approach probably you can take care, and then you may simply provide that solution to your customer in a way. Yeah. So that's something probably we will go ahead in this whole case study discussion. So building resilient infrastructure as a service architecture. And there will be another case study. So in this today's agenda, I will be covering two case study. First case study is more focused on the infrastructure side of it. That particular infra piece will get covered. So which includes application, data, infrastructure setup and all. The second case study will be focused on microservice architecture side, where we will talk about like, okay, if in case anything goes into containerized approach or platform as a service kind of activities and all of that, then what is the objective behind that? What kind of like probably the option available, how we can resolve that particular solutions and all that particular activity we will discuss in that second case study. So these two case study approach we will take care in today's agenda, right? And I hope like so far whatever we have learned over the weekend in different particular concepts and modules what we have gone through, so this is basically the summary of everything under this particular case study. So in real time scenario, of course, I mean in organization, not sure that you may get opportunity to work on each and every single component. It may be possible that it may not be applicable, but when you are working with particular component or a particular area, like say for example, you are more specialized on application front, you are more specialized on data side or infrastructure side of it. So more or less you are working in one of the area, right? So you need to understand that when you are dealing in one of this particular area and you are specializing into that, so you should know that how rest of the component connects or works with each other. Say for example, you are only working on data side, then you need to understand that how your application and infrastructure interacts with your data. So there are many things cover up under that, like security, like data communication between front end, back end, API, and many other things will be part of it, right? Similarly, if you are working as a developer, then you need to understand that how application going to be developed, how you gonna leverage cloud services, what all the development approach probably you can take care, and that way at least you will be able to focus on those area. And last but not least, infrastructure side of it. So whatever app and data you are planning to host into cloud, how they gonna interact with each other? What kind of like communication probably you can target so that these services are going to be available, or maybe you can say it will provide you kind of option where you can simply plan and manage and go through with those activity the way it is expected. So the ultimate goal over here is that to provide you a kind of idea that in this case study, we will be understanding the variety of options, the concepts, and it will help you out to think about, or it will like instigate you to come up with some thought process when you see any particular problem statement in your job profile or when you're working and all that stuff. So it will help you out to visualize and design the solution looking at the customer requirement or the problem statement, and then accordingly you will be able to propose that solution approach to the customer point of view, right? So first we'll start with case study overview, and then I'll take you through with case study solution as well. Now, this is first case study. I mean, of course, we did one more case study in earlier session as well, but this is something I will take you through end-to-end case study solution. I will take you through with problem statement and all that. I may ask you questions, so I wanted input from all of you guys. So please participate, whatever you know. If you are providing any solution to your customers and you are like familiar kind of scenarios and concepts and all of that, so expecting input from all of you guys as well. So please be attentive, understand this particular problem statement, provide your insight towards the problem statement. What is your thought process? And uh, and trust me, this will really help you out in terms of visualizing about the problem statement and all of that. So it will give you a kind of idea that how to start thinking about problem statement, what kind of like thought process you can come up with it, so it will help you in your day-to-day job as well, right? And of course, I mean, when you appear even for job cloud-based profile and all that, right? So definitely, I mean, these kind of questions come to you, that what is your thinking, what solution you may come up with it. If you use XYZ service, then what benefit of that service you can implement in this solution so that solution become more robust and it will be helpful to the customer side of right activity and all. So yeah, I mean, this whole activity basically help you out in terms of planning and getting familiar with all these scenario, all these understanding and concepts, and it will take you through with better understanding and learning those particular objective, and you may simply go through with this particular option. So let's get started. Now, as I said, usually if it's a classroom session or even if I'm conducting like solution architect certification AZ305, which is, so the way I used to conduct this particular case study is that I'll talk about only problem statement and customer requirement, like first two bullet point. And then I share that particular slide deck to the participants. I think I did it earlier also. And participants supposed to come back with their solution, right? So what will happen in that case? Many people think about the problem statement in different way, and everybody comes up with their own approach, right? So that way, at least you will get to know that what are the bullet points or what are the key area you missed or you have covered in your proposal, right? And it will help you out to improvise your like design thinking process, and that way at least it will like push you in terms of more creative thinking about how the solution works, what kind of proposal you can go ahead with it, and it helps customers to achieve their end goal, right? So that's basically the objective. So this is our end-to-end case study. So I will take you through with all of them. And later in the microservice architecture case study, I'm expecting you guys to come up with your own idea or your own input about it, and that way at least it will be a kind of learning options for you as well. Yeah. So first thing in place, the problem statement starts with customer situation. So customer situation is all about Contoso Insurance. Contoso Insurance is basically, I mean, I have just given a hypothetical name to this particular organization. So it's basically an organization who is looking into a kind of scenario, or maybe you can say kind of like activity, where their primary objective, or maybe you can say primary option, where the requirement is uh, it's a kind of understanding, or maybe you can say it's a kind of like approach where the expectation is the uh, solution. As I said, like I always consider that three elements: application, data, and infrastructure, right? So in that particular case, this is something what we need to think about it, what we need to visualize, that how these things are going to work out, and probably if somebody wants to propose that solution approach, then what's the objective, right? What kind of like options probably customer may have, and then probably you can propose or provide that solution end to end into the cloud solution requirement, whatever they do have, right? So let's start with discussion, and we will understand that how these things are going to be work out, and then accordingly probably we can propose this particular solution approach into the system. So, Contoso Insurance, headquartered in Miami, provides insurance solution across North America. Its product include accident and health insurance, life insurance, travel, home and auto coverage. CI stands for Contoso Insurance. Okay. CI manages data collection services by sending mobile agents directly to the insured to gather information as a part of data collection across claims for an insured individual. These mobile agents are based all over the US, and just give me a minute, let me pick up the pointer. Yeah. So mobile agents are managed remotely, and each regional corporate officer has support staff responsible for scheduling their time based on requests that arrive to the system. The company is headquartered in Miami, Florida, with second largest location in Seattle, Washington, along with three smaller branch offices scattered around the US. Contoso would be considered by most as a classic IT shop, mainly focus on their infrastructure. Their application development department skill set is dated, predominantly focused on client server development. 2 years ago, the company began a project to move portions of their infrastructure to Azure to gain efficiencies and eventual exit the hardware obsolescence cycle. This is like common problem statement most of the IT environment faces, like the obsolescence of their hardware life cycle, right? This project has been executed under the leadership of Louis Franklin, head of infrastructure and the operations. Many Contoso applications have an Active Directory domain service dependency, and so building a domain controller infrastructure was the starting point of Contoso's cloud build out. So initially when they started with domain control building, because that is one of the primary requirement from most of the enterprises. They expect that they wanted to go ahead and set up their particular activity, and then accordingly their primary objective to go ahead with those options the way it is expected. So ultimately, like we need to figure it out, or maybe you can say we need to identify that how these things are going to be work out, or maybe you can say you will be able to provide that solution in place, and then accordingly you will be able to go through with those activity or those services the way it is expected, right? So that's basically the objective. Maybe we can think about it. So if I continue, many Contoso application have an Active Directory domain service dependency, and So building a domain controller infrastructure was the starting point for Contoso Cloud build out. For the current ADDS implementation in Azure, the team has deployed a single domain controller VM in the West Central US region. This region was chosen due to its proximity to the headquarters. It is running on standard D2 instance with Active Directory deployed on the C drive. So it's basically considered that customer is not using Microsoft Entra ID. They have set up their own particular infrastructure in their cloud itself, and they are like going ahead with as it is like option, or maybe you can say infra-based directory service in cloud. Current situation. So for many years, Contoso's claim process was done mainly via phone by their remote agents. This was then upgraded to a web-based claim application. The application team then migrated the claims application to Azure using VMs within the same West Central US region. Right. So if you guys remember on day one itself, we discussed that in case any solution or any activity we are planning, then what sort of approach probably we should propose, what kind of like activity or solution maybe we can have it in place, then how that is something going to be work out, what kind of like activity probably we will be able to go ahead and all that stuff, right? So that's something maybe we need to think about it. So that's like a kind of approach or kind of like scenario, maybe we can have it in place. So here what we are like looking at it, what probably we need to think about. So uh, yeah, they have deployed a load balancer in front of the web servers and configured TCP help probe to monitor the servers in the load balance pool. So if you guys remember, or if you want to, like you can say, consider this particular concepts or maybe consider this particular activity, then you have already learned about load balancer, how the load balancer works, what kind of like approach maybe we can have, what kind of like scenario probably we can think of and all of that, right? So those things we have learned about it. So in case you wanted to plan and manage, if you, in case you wanted to associate these particular activities in place, then it will help you out, or maybe you can say it will give you a kind of approach or scenario, and then you will be able to design and implement your solution or services the way it is expected, right? So those kind of like activity probably you will be able to go for it. So when they need scalability, they manually configure another web servers and often leave it running even after the need for additional capacity has passed. Taking their cue from AD and web farms, right? Web teams, the database administrator have also rolled out their SQL Server onto Azure VM, choosing to the choosing to host them in West Central US region as well. The claim application database has been deployed on single VM with multiple disks. One disk is utilized for data, the other disk is for backup and log file storage. So whatever I'm scenario talking about, these are like a real-time problem statement, real-time scenarios, the way we are managing, right? So here we need to think about all these particular current situation and what is the future roadmap is something we need to talk about. Each of the branch office are small enough to not require an on-site server infrastructure. These locations have connectivity to their headquarters through a virtual private network. While the Azure deployments have served Contoso well so far, they are concerned about their reliability. Agents have reported intermittent issue with the reliability of the claim application. These incidents have been correlated with service health issue of the underlying SQL Server VM. Over a recent 3-day holiday weekend, there was an incident with ADDS domain controller where the disk drive housing the AD database filled up and corrupted the database. This prompted a high priority support call to Microsoft. While the damage was mitigated, the team was fortunate that the consequences were minimal. Retroactively, checks were made on other VM disk drive, and there were several of them that were getting close to capacity due to teams not proactively monitoring their servers. This is one of the biggest issue after even migrating in cloud as well. Many organizations are facing this issue. So people who all are supporting that application, people who all are supporting that particular workload and all, they are supposed to come out of the mindset of on-premise data center. Because usually what is happening, many enterprises who develop their solution and host it on-premise, they continue with their mindset that, okay, in cloud also we deploy once and forget about it. So that is one of the biggest issue when it comes to cloud point of view, right? So we need to focus on that. At times, various branch offices have experienced connectivity issue over the VPN to SAN. While there is some understanding of these occurrences, there is a desire to increase the stability of the connection as growth continues. Contoso is connected via a Windows Server Routing and Remote Access Service (RRAS) VPN connection to Azure via a site-to-site gateway. They are looking for options to provide redundancy for the hybrid connectivity to Azure due to recent network issues. These issues prompted Contoso to perform business analysis of the claim application. In the resulting report, Janet Lewis, Business Continuity Team Director, says it appears that while services have moved to the cloud, overall paradigm has not moved from single data center model we have always deployed. Right? So exactly the same thing I just now mentioned, that many organizations migrate to cloud, but the thought process, the design thinking, it's still relative to on-premise data center only. So that is something you need to come out of it. As a result, Louis' team has been given an executive mandate to implement and claim application SLA of at least 99.95% over each calendar month, with proactive monitoring and alerting for key metrics on all critical servers. In addition, the mandate requires disaster recovery solution in place in the event of failure of the entire West Central US Azure region. The business has specified a 4 hours recovery time objective RTO with recovery point objective RPO of 6 hours for the data, right? So if you guys remember, we talked about this RTO RPO thing in our earlier sessions, right? So this will help you to understand the terminology and all. Backup of all critical VMs and database must also be verified and monitored. In parallel with above, Jordan North, the senior development lead responsible for the claim application, has been working on next generation architecture for the claim application. He plans to migrate the application from IaaS to PaaS using web app for the web tier and Azure SQL database for the database. Aware of the increased focus on resiliency, he is aware that PaaS migration project will be stalled if offers a lower level of resilience than enhanced IaaS implementation. Right, so this is something we always compare, that which one is better, IaaS versus PaaS and resiliencies and many other things, right? So this is also one of the comparison. He is therefore looking to implement an equivalent level of high availability disaster recovery and backup. So customer need. Here we are considering that what will be the customer need and how that particular customer need basically gonna support and provide you a kind of option, or maybe you can say provide you a kind of like activity where you will be able to go through, or maybe you can say kind of provide you a kind of approach where they will be able to plug and play and manage those activities in terms of cloud perspective, right? So that's something probably we need to think about it, or we need to identify and visualize that how that option going to be work out, right? So customer needs starts with variety of concepts and options. So redundancy and resiliency for ADDS domain controller servers and the web app, web and database servers for the claims application to deliver the 99.95% or greater SLA required by the business. Improved reliability for their VPN connections from branch offices. An automated mechanism for a quick recovery of the claims applications in the event of disaster impacting the entire West Central US Azure region, a plan for recovery from data corruption or accidental deletion for all critical infrastructure components, a comprehensive solution for monitoring the health of Azure VMs, databases, and backups with proactive alerting of any issues. An understanding of how to achieve an equivalent level of high availability, disaster recovery, and backup for the next generation PaaS-based implementation of the claim application. In addition, Contoso requires a detailed understanding of the cost associated with each of the above, right? So the requirement is, of course, the SL and everything we need to achieve, but at the same time, the cost comparison is also required, right? And most of the solutions are always expected to come up with cost as well, right? What is the whole solution cost? We are supposed to provide that info. Now, what are the customer objections? So they are expecting failover. Contesto are uncomfortable with any situation that assumes the cloud provider will handle their failover. So customer wanted to maintain their own failover scenario. BCDR, business continuity and disaster recovery, right? So Contesto wants to know their BCDR and backup solutions are secure or not. Backup, Contesto also want to be able to test both BCDR and backup solutions regularly. So this is basically a customer objection at high level, summary of whatever we discussed earlier. And what we need to do is that we are supposed to come up with diagrammatic approach, proposal, solution, what all the design thinking considerations and all of that. And that way, at least we are supposed to provide the complete detail insight about this particular problem statement. Whatever we discussed, I have summarized in one slide. I'm not going through in this, but this is just the direction I have highlighted or listed out in this slide that, okay, I mean, whatever we discussed so far, so the bullet point, usually we do this, right, in our project that what is our understanding that we list out the bullet point and we understand that, okay, if this is the requirement, then what should be the approach towards problem statement, and then maybe we will be able to go ahead with that solution in a way, correct? So that is what I have listed under this particular single slide. So the requirement from case study point of view, that pricing provides an estimate to the cost associated with each aspect of your solution. Okay. Be sure to cover all aspects of the design, including the primary site, DR solution, backup solution, VPN, and monitoring cost, because these are the core component of this whole solution. Include a comparison of IaaS solution and the PaaS solution as well, because there was one of the bullet point mentioned in customer requirement that parallelly one platform as a service team also working on it, and they are looking for that what is the estimation come up with this particular comparison, right? And last but not least, have you included all appropriate cost saving measure? So this is something more towards governance side of it, that when you are planning to propose this particular solution, then you are supposed to provide the input that, okay, I mean, if you are going ahead with so and so thing, then uh, uh, what is the end goal? What the uh, a governance activity you may simply go ahead with it, and then probably you can uh, provide that particular governance approach or activity altogether into the system what we are like looking at it. So ultimately the goal over here is that we need to identify, or probably we need to visualize that how this particular overall solution approach works, what will be the case study solution maybe you will be able to provide, and based on that we need to come up with our design thinking process and provide a kind of recommendation to our customers, or maybe to our solution, and that way at least we will be able to go through with this particular overall understanding or maybe overall scenario in this particular approach. Yeah, so let me know if you guys have any queries or questions before start discussing about case study, what sort of approach we should take it. So whenever we are planning, or maybe you can say whenever we are thinking about our cloud solutions or the approach what we are expecting in our end-to-end services or end-to-end activity, then most important area is that from where to get started, right? So, of course, we understood that what is the objective, what is the requirement, and high level scenario and everything is in place. But we need to understand, we need to visualize that if this is the criteria comes into picture, then from where we can get started. What should be the thought process? We should come up with it so that we can provide a better solution to our customer, and then we can have a kind of agenda in place, right? So here, basically, the overall approach, or maybe you can say overall activity, whatever we have from the solution perspective, or maybe the requirement perspective. Of course, I mean, as we just now heard that it was high level component. So we need to break down this whole requirement, and we need to think about all possible area which is something expected as a part of the solution, and then probably we can provide that input to our customer, right? So here, what I'm planning to do is that we will understand this whole scenario by breaking down into a different component. We will discuss that, okay, which area, which component, which scenario basically most applicable in our use case if we want to go ahead with it, how that is something going to work out, and probably if you are supposed to provide that specific criteria, then how it works and what should be the solution approach, maybe you will be able to go about it, right? So first thing in place, we should understand what all the existing component customer has. Okay. So if I wanted to list out, if I'm a kind of solution, I'm playing a role of solution architect, and I'm supposed to provide a solution to my customer, then I'll prefer to get started my approach something like this, where I will get idea that what all the existing element customer has, if they are expecting this particular problem statement to address, then what services, what solution, what is the criteria? If they are going ahead with it, then what will be the output they're gonna achieve, right? So that's how basically I'll get started. I'll break down my whole solution approach, and then probably we will get started and understand one by one this particular overall area the way it is expected. Yeah. So starting with the overall option, or maybe you can say the concept behind the this particular case study thing, what we are planning to discuss about it, right? So first of all, you will be able to visualize that uh, what all the existing components customer has. So as per the problem statement, here if you see, I have list out the existing architecture or existing element or services what customer is up and running with it. And those existing components are, like you can say, customer has services like you can think of application server, domain controller VM, they have load balancer, they have SQL database, networking point of view, they do have options in terms of RRAS servers and all that. So here we are supposed to come up with the idea where we can provide a kind of solution where the object, so here if you observe, nowhere mention in the whole solution that you should start, or maybe you should definitely provide a recommendation, because platform as a service point of view, they have started. So if I am planning to propose this solution, then we have to stick to plan. And we need to think about that how infrastructure as a service and resiliency, if we are planning to provide and propose to the customer, how it works, considering all infrastructure as a service component in place, and then we can propose that particular solution to our customer. So here, when we are talking about platform as a service, definitely, I mean, we do have some particular consideration. that okay, what all the design thinking we can come up with it, what all the possibilities, not possibilities, and all that thing we need to explore and all. But yeah, the primary requirement from customer side is infrastructure as a service, and we should address that infrastructure as a service component first in place, and then we can go ahead with next component or next recommendation towards the solution what is expected, right? So here uh, we need to also consider some of the core point which is very much important as a part of this solution. Okay, and that is something maybe you can observe or you can think about is more in terms of SLA. As per the customer's objective, they are expecting a particular better SLA month on month, right, as per the calendar, and they are expecting SLA to be provided across the infrastructure as a service and the components what they are like up and running with it, so they can achieve better SLA for their end-to-end solution and then provide a services or maybe you can say a kind of activity throughout that. So we need to think about SLA, how we can achieve this SLA 99.95% greater than, right? Because that is something month on month expected that this SLA, if it is achieved, then that is something really a particular great solution approach they can have it in place, correct? So that is what expected, and we are supposed to think about and we can plan that particular option towards the services whatever we do have. So that is something probably we will be able to think about it, and we can plan and manage and propose or come up with that solution approach and maybe thinking those services in place. So first thing in place, by looking at current requirement or looking at the number of components or number of services like provided by the customers or provided by the requirement, this is how I will highlight that what all the services we do have in terms of proposal if we are going ahead with some sort of services what we are like looking at it. Okay, Jasveer says availability set for VM we can get SLA 99.95%. Correct. But here the expectation from customer side is that we are supposed to cross that 99.95% SLA and we should achieve that SLA beyond that particular classification, whatever they have, right? So we are supposed to think about it and we can plan and provide that recommendation, and that way at least we can have some particular activity to be considered. So we'll talk about it. So here if you guys see that to achieve the particular SLA or to propose this particular like outcome, so the first thing in place, domain controller was part of it, right? So customer already has that particular solution in place, and then accordingly customer may probably go through with that particular approach or activity altogether, and they will be able to play around with that classification, and they will be able to identify that how this is something probably going to work out, and maybe if in case we need to play around with it, then what's the scope available in that case, right? So we have domain controller, we have SQL server in VM, we have web app server in VM, we have load balancer in place, we have Azure backup and site recovery, we have like SQL Server AOAG, always on availability group kind of concepts. We have traffic manager in place. We do have uh, thinking about availability zones as well. We need to think about like how availability set and availability zone may gonna work. What is the comparison between both of them? What SLA that is something going to provide and all that, right? So that is also we need to like think about it. Web app, if it's a platform as a service, we are planning to go ahead with it or provide a kind of recommendation to our customers, then we need to think about that part as well. If in case comparison is expected between IaaS versus PaaS, right? So we can simply go ahead with this comparison and then maybe we will be able to plan and provide a kind of recommendation to our customer. right? So that's basically the objective. So here we can have the options available as a part of it, or maybe you can say the solution what we are expecting. So uh, so the next thing is more about you can consider, or maybe you can say you can visualize or think about it like in case of planning and working or managing something towards the cloud point of view, then what will be the option or services we will be able to go about it, right? So VPN gateway, storage, SQL database, front door services. I have tried identifying that what all the possible components can be or we can recommend in our solution, right? Because unless and until you don't know that what will be the approach, what will be the components, maybe you will be able to go about it, then it will be really challenging for you to visualize, right? So here I have identified those options. I have visualized that, okay, looking at this particular activity, how customer probably go ahead with it, and then we'll be able to plan and maintain and manage this particular recommendation in place, correct? So this will basically help you out in terms of thinking and visualizing all these particular activity and approach in place. So front door, load balancer, and many other components are part of it. Now, along with this, what we are expecting that along with this particular thought process, first we need to address the SLA, that if you are planning to propose any solution, the customer primary objective is to identify, or maybe you can say visualize that how uh, how things going to work out, or maybe you can say how things going to be planned and managed, and then probably they will be able to like play around with those activity or play around with those options the way it is expected, right? So that's basically the uh, uh, thought process, or maybe you can say the activity. Maybe we just need to simplify and plan and manage in that particular case. So this is basically the option, or maybe you can say this is basically the objective, what we are supposed to go ahead with it. And in that particular case, we will be able to think about these options the way it is expected. So first option is SLA. What I have tried when I'm explaining these concepts, I have tried adding some of the reference links as well. So if you guys wanted to deep dive into it, we have talked about this scenario in our learning as well as. So I wanted to go through with these links. You can refer to them. You can check that, okay, if I wanted to provide SLA between availability set versus availability zone, then which one works best way, how the design thinking you will come up with it. So here they have given some particular list of idea or services and kind of comparisons and all of that, right? So it will help you out comparing those particular components, and you will get some particular better insight about this particular thought process as well. Okay. So whenever we are planning with like availability set versus availability zone. So if you guys remember when we were talking about services like load balancer, fault fault domain, update domain, right? If you remember earlier, we talked about it already. So when you are planning to work on those kind of activity, whenever you are planning to understand the SLA kind of activity for your cloud solution approach and all of that, this is something very much required, that how your services, how your solutions and activities going to be work out, and then probably you will be able to propose that SLA. So if I'm planning with availability set, customer will get 99.95% SLA, because that is something supported as a part of or as a solution of this availability set, right? So that way, at least it is bound to offer you 99.95% SLA. But as per the expectation or looking at the customer need, customer is looking for SLA beyond 99.95%. And that is something they can achieve it with the help of availability zones, right? So that is something we understood earlier, that you can design and deploy your particular infrastructure, which is deployed into multiple availability zones, and you can create a particular global load balancer which allows you to distribute your network traffic amongst those available server, and then you can load balance amongst the application, right? Now question comes in mind. So for example, like the way Ashok was explaining that, okay, I mean, if it's a SQL server, then we need to think about how load balancer works and all, right? But if it is the PaaS, then that is something taken care by service itself, correct? So here I will talk about that part as well. If we stick to infrastructure as a service only, then is it possible to load balance, right? Can we do traffic load balancing to SQL Server? Answer is yes, we can. So here we can create a group of servers in the single region, and there is one more server will be extended into another region with DR planning and all three server will be mapped under AOAG, always on availability group concept, along with SQL Server scenario. So that will basically help you out, or maybe you can say it will provide you a kind of like option where you will be able to simply plan and maintain and work with those activity in place. So we will understand them in next slide, where we will break down those activities uh, and that way at least it will help you out, or maybe it will give you kind of understanding that how that's something going to be work out. So first of all, proposed architecture, which includes high availability exceed 99.95% SLA. So I have tried giving high heading of the slide in a way so that, I mean, it will address the problem statement, what is given by customer, and the solution, proposed solution around that. Okay. So SLA exceeds access to 99.95% for composite application requires availability zone for both web and SQL Server. You cannot achieve SLA only for application tier, right? You need your database also to be highly available. You have to design and plan in a way so that both the activity will be addressed and managed in that particular scenario, correct? So that is something we need to think about. Migrate to a different region, for example, central US. AZs are not supported in west central US, right? So probably when we are targeting, I mean, probably now Microsoft might have started. So here we also need to address or check that what all the regions we do have availability zones are supported. So your primary region, your secondary region for DR and all that stuff, when you are targeting these things, you need to address well in advance, and then accordingly you will be able to go ahead with that, correct? So that is something we can check over here, and then probably we can recommend in that particular scenario. Then op optionally, web tier should use HTTP probe with custom health check package, health check page. Optionally consider using VM scale set or web tier, right? SQL Server to use always on availability group with cloud witness, synchronized replication, and automatic failover. This is like built-in process of always on availability group, and deploy two AD servers in separate availability zone. Now, of course, I mean, we can recommend customer that, hey, you are managing domain controller on your own, it might be a little bit expensive, or probably it might be a little bit complicated task. So better you can migrate from managing your enterprise identity on your own. Instead of that, you should migrate to Microsoft Entra ID, and you will be like relaxed with those particular identity management, right? So that is something definitely we can recommend. But as of now, looking at the customer's current situation, I'll go ahead with as is approach and infrastructure to infrastructure resiliency. So here, first option, we will talk about web tier. That what all the things we can add under web tier so that customer can achieve a particular solution. So we can have application VM should be like straightforward to deploy into availability zone. The web VM load balancer currently use TCP help probe. This should be changed to HTTP probe, preferably pointing to a custom health check page that verifies that application is working as expected. including access to the database from basic to standard load balancer queue. So we all remember that under load balancer topic, we understood or we learnt about it that in case of planning and understanding that how this particular load balancer works and what sort of like approach probably we will be able to play around with it, right? So that is something we discussed about it. So in that particular scenario, or maybe you can say in that particular activity, we do have option, we do have kind of like scenario or approach in place, and that basically help you out or provide you a kind of consideration in that particular uh, scenario in that case, right? So that way at least we will be able to figure it out, the overall options what we have. So here, uh, migrating to VM scale set would allow the web tier to auto scale based on demand. VM scale set support regional deployment spanning availability zone as well. So if you remember, we discussed this option that in case of planning and working or maybe defining some particular high level solution around that, then in that particular scenario, you will be able to go ahead with this particular activity the way it is expected. So ultimately, the goal over here is that we need to figure it out that how this particular component, or maybe you can say how this particular approach probably going to like help you out, and then maybe you will be able to play around with those activity the way it is expected. So the scope over here is that, or maybe you can say the option what we are considering, right? So this is something basically like give you better understanding, or maybe you can say better visualization that those activity and solution, maybe if you need to play around with it, then how that option probably going to work out in that particular case. So that's for web tier. Second is SQL Server. So a second SQL Server should be deployed to the primary site, forming a SQL Server always on availability group. This should be configured with synchronous replication and automatic failover. When you create a SQL Server cluster along with always on availability group, that will basically provide you this feature built in into the system. And then accordingly, you will be able to go ahead with those options, or probably you can manage the option into the system what we are like looking at, right? So that's something probably we can plan and manage, or it will give you that particular classification the way it is expected. So we can provide that. The server should be behind an internal Azure load balancer with direct server written enabled. So load balancer, so if you guys remember, we do have this particular option available in load balancer that we can create front end and internal load balancer, or maybe you can say public and private load balancer behind the scene. And then accordingly, you will be able to play around with those particular services or those particular activity into the system the way it is expected. So primarily, what we are expecting, or maybe you can say primarily the solution approach, what we are looking at it, you will be able to play around with those components, and then you may simplify that solution end to end the way it is expected. And the SQL Server will use premium managed disk with a database log files on separate disk. The temp DB will be housed on the local host SSD drive and split to match the number of cores in the VM. SQL Server will have three drive letters C, F, and G. And last but not least, ADDS domain controller. So I'll talk about it. And this is how your architecture, sample architecture looks like. Your front end with web server, back end with SQL Server, managed with internal load balancer, configured with always on availability group. Storage account will become a cloud witness, and replication kind of activity will be taken care by that area. And storage is like zone redundant service. So that way, at least we are leveraging storage account, and it will basically help you out in terms of planning and working with those activity into the system the way it is expected. So ultimately, the goal over here is that, or maybe you can say the approach what we are looking at it in that particular scenario or in that particular activity, we will be able to plan and maintain and work with those options the way it is expected, right? So here, that is something probably we can have it in place. Now, here, what we are expecting that AD domain controller service which is required, right? So those two servers are also deployed in availability zone. Okay, so domain controller should be deployed into separate availability zone with two VMs in the central US region. These servers should be synchronized with on-premise AD via the VPN. The virtual network DNS server settings should be updated to point to these servers. So these particular changes, mechanism and everything we need to take care so that it will help you out to address this particular problem statement into our solution, right? So that is something probably we can plan and manage, and then probably we can address back into the system what we are like looking at it. So that way, at least domain controller still works with infra point of view only. I'm not moving into Entra ID. I'll leave it as is, and that basically helps me in terms of maintaining those particular sort of component or those kind of like activity the way it is expected. So here what we are like looking at it, where you can say or where you can consider that in case of planning and working, or maybe you can say like in case of planning and working with any of this solution, or maybe you can say the approach what we are expecting, that is something probably you will be able to plan and manage, and then you will be able to go through with that objective what we are like looking at it, right? So that's basically the option maybe we need to uh, like thought of accordingly. So that's the objective over here we do have. Now, under along with this networking solution, okay, how can you improve the reliability for the Contoso branch office VPN connection? So key point, identify and eliminate as many single point of failure as you can. So how you can do it? Current VPN has a single point of failure at the on-premise VPN gateway RRAS server. The Azure Virtual Network Gateway and the ISP connection from the on-premise can be eliminated via active VPN. Now I am assuming that okay, customer has like right now this VPN gateway created manually. They have not implemented site to site or direct connect or express route kind of scenario. Then how can I improvise, right? So I can provide alternative that okay, I mean if you don't want to go ahead with site to site and express route and all with high bandwidth and all that stuff, still you have option. You create two server and map with two availability zone with gateway and all where you have active scenario created. So this will be again, it's a burden or overhead activity. So definitely when you are recommending, you should always talk about your point of view, right? What will be the best suitable or not suitable and all that stuff. So customer will get to know and they will understand that, okay, oh yeah, if this is the case, then how we can go about it and what should be the approach and all that stuff, right? So here we can have that mapping available. So on-premise RRAS VPN server can be deployed in a cluster. Alternatively, the server could be upgraded to dedicated hardware VPN devices. So as we talked about, like okay, later stage, this will be replaced with site-to-site VPN, and then you can have better operation management or site-to-site VPN kind of options will be available as a part of it, right? ISP internet connection. So here probably if we have multiple site-to-site VPN connection from each on-premise VPN device, then in that case you will be able to resolve this particular issue. So right now I'm not going into reading this bullet points at least at high level, but here I can say this is something basically provided with the support of site-to-site VPN or express route kind of solution so that customer can have better dedicated network bandwidth and connectivity with their environment, and they will be able to plan and manage and take care of that specifications, or maybe you can say the solution approach what they are looking at it and you can have a better services or better activity to be followed into the system what we are like looking at it, right? So that's basically the objective maybe we can think of, and probably you will be able to plan and maintain and work with those classification the way it is expected. Now, DR planning, customer is also looking for a particular disaster recovery kind of requirement where the objective behind the scene is that to take care or maintain the DR, and they should have a high availability and other particular scenario in place, right? So that's basically the objective, what is expected by the customer, and that is something we need to provide a kind of recommendation in this place, correct? So here, if you are looking at it, paired region East US2, so Central US with East US2, so there will be a region pairing. Web server, we can use Azure Site Recovery if it's infrastructure as a service, because in platform as a service, ASR won't work, right? We all know that Azure Site Recovery will not be applicable with our particular platform as a service. So we need to think about that, how this ASR going to be supported and what kind of like approach probably we can have so that these services or probably the application and environment will be able to work out, and that way at least we will be able to manage those activity the way it is expected. So here we need to think about those scenarios. Here we need to plan and manage those particular criteria. And in that particular case, it will help you out, or maybe you can say cloud point of view, you may simply go ahead and you will be able to plug and play and maintain those particular activity the way it is expected, right? So that's basically the option maybe we can plug and play. So on the right hand side, if you see, the primary region is Central US will get replicated East US2 with the combination of ASR, and ASR will help you out in terms of plug and play and management of those activities. Okay, so here what we have to think about, or maybe you can say we need to plan in a way that how this is something probably uh, going to work out, or maybe uh, probably you can say this will basically gonna help you out, or maybe you can say it will basically provide you a kind of approach that you can simplify that how this is something probably we can plan or manage, and then maybe you will be able to take care of that DR. So Central US you have in place, you can go through with East US too. You can replicate your particular services. You can plan that particular always on availability group asynchronously across region, synchronously within region, and that way it will help you out in terms of planning and maintaining that particular solution approach in terms of overall activity, the way it is taken care. So we need to figure it out, or maybe you can say we need to identify that how these particular activity maybe we can plan, or maybe you can say we can play around with those activity, and then according to that you will be able to play around with those solutions or play around with those activity in terms of cloud perspective, right? So that's basically the objective we can have. So here, what we need to visualize, or maybe we can say we need to identify that, like if this is the case, then what is your like outcome? What kind of like approach probably we can go ahead so that you will be able to provide those activity. So that's basically the understanding of cross-region DR and all, right? Now here, since you are working with infrastructure as a service, you have a control. You can basically connect with cross-region. You can test and validate. You can visualize those activities in better way, that planning and maintaining that particular testing and validating things, or probably interacting with those options, maybe like provide you a kind of option or provide you a kind of activity where you will be able to take care of those approach or take care of those scope into the system, and then accordingly you may simply like plug and play and validate those like scenario the way it is expected, right? So those kind of things maybe we can play around with it. So you have Central US, you have East US too. Both the components are in place, and in that particular scenario, with the combination of this, maybe you will be able to play around with this activity, and then in that particular case, you can simplify the end-to-end solution will be addressed in terms of cloud point of view, right? So that is something maybe we can plan. Now, backup perspective. So here we can take regular backup. Microsoft Azure is offering you web tier backup where we can use Azure backup, and it will take care of your regular backup into the system. If it's a SQL server, then we know that backup to URL scenario available if it's a SQL server, or if it's an instance, then maybe we can take VM backup also in the regular basis, right? So that way, at least it will help you out, or maybe you can simply address that backup scenario in place, and then maybe we will be able to plug and play and maintain that particular scope, right? Now here, web VMs and SQL and backup. So we can use Azure Monitor for VMs. We can create a different type of like reporting mechanism for our virtual machines and instances what we have. We can collect those reports. We can store that particular report centrally, and then maybe, or we can have even alert notifications and other things as well. So that if you trigger anything as such, it will help you out, or it will provide you kind of update that what is going on back into the system, and then according to that you will be able to play around with those options into the system the way it is expected, right? So that way at least you will be able to manage them into the activity or solution what we are looking at it. So it will provide you a kind of option, or maybe you can say the scenario, and in that particular case you can take a regular backup and other things also into the system what we are looking at it. Now if I'm thinking about platform as a service, right? Platform as a service point of view, whenever you are considering in cloud point of view, so platform as a service of course do not have feature included with ASR, right? So Azure Site Recovery will not be applicable. So in that case, maybe I can consider that I'll go ahead as is with my this thing, and then it will help you out in terms of maintaining that scope. If it is the high availability or DR and all that stuff, so nowadays Microsoft started offering this feature, right, where you can have availability zone created and set up with your environment so that it will help you out in terms of planning and maintaining those activity back into the system what we are like looking at it. So ultimately the goal over here is that to provide you a kind of option, or maybe you can say provide you a kind of activity where you will be able to plan and maintain and go through with those scenarios to be manage or maintain into the system uh, accordingly, right? So here, whenever you are planning with infra and all that, right? Now, what I have done, so this is basically the high level solution what we discussed. I have like highlighted cost, infra costing and all that. So this particular costing is something probably help you out, or maybe you can say it will provide you a kind of approach where you can think about like, okay, in case of planning and working with any of this particular activity, or planning and working with any of the solution, then we need to break down those components, right? We have VPN gateway, domain controller, log analytics, alert mechanism. These are some of the standard infra operation cost we need to consider. So I have just highlighted some of the high level design thinking or consideration bullet points, and I have put up some estimated value. Okay, I mean, we need to actually go to the portal and then we can get some real idea that what is the cost applicable towards the solutions and all. Then pricing for application, that if my application is going to up and running, then what will be the cost? So we have web VM, SQL VM, bandwidth, log analytics, alert rule, VM backup, SQL backup, Azure Site Recovery, SQL VM with DR, traffic manager, right? Virtual network, log analytics for those instances, alert rule. So here, if you see both region I have considered, Central US and East US too, so that whatever services, infrastructure, resources you are planning, So, and now you will understand that why, like I broke down those components into individual solution broke down into individual service or individual component, right? So this way, at least you will get to know that, okay, if we do have some of the standard services available as a part of this particular environment or as a part of this particular solution approach in place, then how that is something going to be work out, or probably we can have those options in place in that particular scenario, right? So we will get to know, or we will identify that how things going to be work out, and probably you will be able to plan and manage and go through with the specific criteria what we are like looking at it. So that is something we can have it in place. That is something we can plan and manage and take care those options, right? Now, for comparison point of view, I have added even platform as a service pricing as well. Now, comparatively between infrastructure and platform, we have these two elements completely different, okay? And in that particular scenario, your pricing may vary into that particular case, correct? So you need to figure it out, or you need to visualize that how these things going to be addressed, what consideration probably we consider so that it will cover up those particular area, and then maybe you will be able to provide some recommendation in place, right? So here, whatever the component, whatever the solutions and approach we are planning to recommend, or maybe we are planning to provide a kind of input and all that stuff, then this is something platform as a service point of view. Also, I have added some comparison metrics that, okay, what all the services you can recommend. So probably it can be your storage account, it can be your particular standard service where you can understand that, okay, looking at these particular environment, what will be the best recommendation customer can have it in place, right? So it will be web app for DR, SQL database. So here I'm considering all of them as a PaaS component. So of course, infrastructure as a service point of view, we do have possibility, but at the same time, we are considering platform as a service comparison as well. So it will give you some better visualization and thought process, and then accordingly, you will be able to go ahead with that best recommendation approach into the system what we are like looking at it, right? So that's basically the consideration. So this is something probably I can think of, and I can provide a kind of recommendation or approach in that scenario, and then customer can probably go ahead with those options altogether in place. So this is something maybe we can think about it. And I have tried answering a couple of other that, okay, what will be the cost optimization scenario? Maybe we can think of how we can approach and all that stuff. So here, starting with reservation, that whatever the infrastructure customer is planning to go for it, the VM or SQL server or application server or domain controller and all that. Now, since let's say customer decided to go ahead with IaaS only, okay? So then in that particular case, we are supposed to think about it like how we can help customers to improvise and manage their costing scenario and all, correct? So in that case, you have this option where you will be able to plan your particular costing along with a reserve instance in place, and with the help of that, you will be able to plan and maintain and take care of that particular cost reservation activity into the system what we are like looking at it, right? So that's basically the objective what we have. So maybe 1 year, 3 year, looking at the application scope and scenario, we can decide what will be the reservation strategy we are accordingly. We can probably go ahead with that particular criteria, right? So that way, at least you can simplify, or maybe you will be able to plan and maintain, and then probably you will be able to provide that criteria the way it is expected. So that is something probably we can recommend. Along with this, Contests are uncomfortable with any situation that assumes that cloud provider will handle their failover. So potential answer over here is that ASR. Azure Site Recovery provides you a kind of approach where customer can decide their own failover scenario. They can replicate their workload across the cloud, or sorry, across the region, and then they will be able to test and validate their particular ASR related activity in place, correct? So that way, at least they will be able to manage that particular scenario. Other objection, Contoso want to know their BCDR and backup solutions are secure. So potential answer could be all of the traffic and data used for all Azure BCDR feature is secured both at rest and in transit. As a result, there is no difference in this data and any other data that is running or stored into Azure. So that way, at least you are covering that particular data and data at rest, data in transit security. Other objection was Contoso also want to be able to test both the BCDR and backup solution regularly. So ASR allows for non-disruptive test failovers to validate the failover process, and backup can be restored to a parallel cloud environment to verify their availability and integrity as well. So definitely you can perform that and you can test and validate things and you will be able to manage that particular option accordingly. Correct? So that's all about the whole solution approach, what we discuss, the problem statement and the solution, which basically help us in terms of planning and working with the particular criteria if we need to play around with it. And in case of providing any solution, or maybe you can say, in case of going through with this particular activity, then what is the option probably we will be able to plan and manage, and that way accordingly you will be able to play around with this activity or solution in case.
So that's a clip from our cloud certification and job focus program where our experts cover the essentials of building a highly available Azure solution. From design best practices to disaster recovery, monitoring, and cost saving strategies. These are the skills that directly map to a real solution architect, cloud engineer, or cloud support job roles. And many of our learners who started just like you have successfully transitioned into solution architect, cloud engineer, or cloud support roles by following this structured, hands-on project-based approach. And you can be next. Also, to go deeper and accelerate your career, make sure you join our free Azure Job Class. We'll guide you on mastering cloud skills, cracking interviews, and building a portfolio that top companies look for. Seats are limited, so grab yours today. Also, if this video helped you, hit the like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing what additional topics you would like us to cover. Thanks for watching and make sure you watch this video next.